Hey guys, tonight we're slipping back into the chill of the Middle Ages. Not just the kind that nips at your nose, but the kind that seeps into your bones, the kind that makes you dread sundown. You're about to find out how people actually survived nights so cold their breath would freeze on the inside of their blankets. Picture this. You're not watching this from your cozy couch or under a weighted blanket. No, you're standing at the edge of a walled town somewhere in medieval Europe. The sun has just dipped behind a row of thatched roofs, and already your fingers ache. You clutch your cloak tighter, but the wind snakes through it anyway, like it's got a personal grudge. You won't believe this, but those layers of wool, not nearly enough, especially when half the heat inside people's homes leaks out through holes in the walls, the floor and the roof. All right, before you get too cozy, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe, but only if your heart says yes. And hey, drop your location and the time you're watching. Let's see who's cozying up from the coldest corners of the world. Dim the lights, get that fan going for some background vibes, and let's chill into tonight's little adventure. You pass beneath the town gate, its iron fittings frosted over and creaking in the cold wind. The guard on duty barely glances at you. He's too busy stomping his feet to keep the blood flowing. His nose is red, not with drink, but with the dry, punishing air. You nod a greeting, he grunts, not out of rudeness, just out of energy conservation. The streets are quiet, though not silent. Somewhere, a dog howls. Somewhere else, the sharp crack of splitting wood as someone prepares for the long night ahead. You pull your hood lower and make your way down a rutted path between homes, their walls leaning with age and cold. Smoke curls from a few chimneys. Most don't bother. Fuel's expensive. Firewood is stored under lock and key. Some even keep it under the bed to stop neighbours from pinching it at night. You pass a small figure squatting by the wall, cloaked in rags. She's rubbing her hands together, blowing into them, muttering something that might be a prayer or a curse. She's old, older than she should be in this time. People don't get wrinkled like that unless they've survived more winters than most, and from the look of her, she's survived plenty. You drop a crust of bread near her and keep walking. She doesn't say thank you. That's fine. You didn't expect her to. A few doors down, a drunk stumbles out of a tavern, humming something tuneless. His breath fogs in the air, thick and white like the smoke from the blacksmith's forge. He clutches a flask to his chest like it's his only child. Maybe it is. You glance through the open tavern door and catch a glimpse of firelight, laughter, steam rising from ale and soup. Tempting, but not where you're staying tonight. Instead, you find your way to a small alley where the wind slices narrower and harder. Here the homes press close together, lean-tos and shacks really. You knock on one door and hear a child coughing behind it. Then, after a long pause, it creaks open. A woman nods you in. No words, just shared understanding. In this world, warmth is a favour exchanged in silence. Inside, the air is thick, not warm, just not moving. You duck to avoid the low beam overhead and crouch beside a pile of straw where two other bodies already lie curled together like spoons. The floor is uneven dirt covered in old rushes, maybe with a dead chicken feather or two for luck. You remove your cloak, careful not to brush the wall. It's wet with condensation, and it'll soak through your sleeves like ink on parchment. You lie down, face to the room. No pillow, just your bundled up arm. Someone shifts beside you. No one says anything. You just breathe in rhythm and wait for sleep, or something close to it. The cold creeps in behind your knees first, then between your shoulders. It's not unbearable, yet, but it will be. Because the real truth about the cold in the Middle Ages, it wasn't a nightly discomfort. It was a test of endurance, every single dusk. The woman who let you in is already dozing in a corner near the hearth, or what passes for one. It's little more than a blackened pit framed by broken bricks and filled with the grey ghosts of yesterday's fire. A few embers remain, glowing faintly under a thin pile of ash. She's saving fuel for later, maybe for a pot of gruel if the wind doesn't pick up and suck all the warmth out of the chimney. Your eyes adjust to the gloom. There's a single candle on the table, its stub of a wick curling into a dying flame. You hear the creak of old wood shifting above you. The roof, made from thatch, is moving in the breeze, whispering threats of collapse. If it snows tonight, you might wake up dusted in white. If it rains, someone will be soaked. You hope it's not you. The children huddled beside you aren't fully asleep. One mumbles through chattering teeth, twitching slightly, probably dreaming of bread. Or fire, maybe both. One of them tucks his toes under your leg, searching for warmth like a kitten. You let him. You're doing the same to the person beside you, whoever that is. No one's name matters when it's this cold. Only the heat does. From outside you hear a soft thud. A bundle of firewood dropped, probably stolen. Then the sharp, short bark of a dog, the jingle of a harness, and silence again. You wonder who's out there. A baker's apprentice fetching fuel before the ovens fire at dawn. A night soil collector making his silent rounds. Someone with warmer boots than you, probably. You remember what someone once told you? In a cold house, people stop speaking. The breath it takes to make words is a luxury, and you feel that now. Every word you don't say is another scrap of heat held close. The woman in the corner mutters in her sleep. Something about sheep, maybe, or St. Bridget's fire. You can't tell, and the candle gives up. The room goes black. You listen instead. Mice scritch in the walls. Wind whistles under the door. Somewhere far off, the deep, hollow bong of the church bell sounds midnight. Time doesn't matter here. Not really. You mark the night not by hours, but by how far the chill has crawled into your bones. First your feet, then your calves. By morning it'll reach your chest, unless you shift just right. They say in towns like this, 1 in 10 cottages lose someone every winter. Not always the elderly either. Sometimes it's the baby who slept too far from the hearth. Sometimes it's the man who drank too much and rolled out of bed. Coal doesn't play favourites. And yet, there are strange tricks to surviving. Some people boil stones and tuck them into cloth to use as foot warmers. Others fill clay jugs with water, heat them near the fire and sleep with them against their bellies. You once met a woman who swore by placing sliced onions under the bed to draw out ice spirits. She'd even stuff her mattress with dried nettles because she believed their sting kept the frost away. It didn't. But believing helps, sometimes more than logic. As you lie there, half asleep, you understand what makes a night survivable isn't just heat, it's habit, muscle memory. Knowing when to curl, when to breathe shallow, how to rotate through the warmest spots without waking anyone. It's the choreography of poverty, the dance of staying just warm enough to see dawn. One of the kids starts coughing again, a wet, sticky cough. You turn your head away. Nothing you can do. The mother stirs, then sighs and does the same. No one has energy for worry. Worry burns calories. You'll need those. Eventually your thoughts drift into strange patterns. Cold dreams, thick forests, steaming baths, woolen mittens that don't exist. You think you're floating. You might be snoring. You don't know, but you're still breathing. And in the Middle Ages, that's as good a victory as any. Morning comes too soon, but not with sunshine. It slinks in through the cracks in the thatch, grey and reluctant, like even the daylight doesn't want to be out in this cold. You wake not because you're rested, but because your hip has gone numb and your nose feels like it's been dipped in icy water. The boy beside you is gone. Maybe he's off to fetch water, or maybe he's the one coughing last night and couldn't make it through. You don't ask. You sit up slowly. Every movement feels like it might snap something. The straw crackles beneath you. Someone has already started to poke the hearth, trying to coax last night's embers back to life. A tiny curl of smoke rises, more hope than heat. You shiver violently, a full-body tremor that shakes loose bits of sleep and dust. That, ironically, helps a bit. The woman hands you a piece of bread dry as a splintered beam. It cracks loudly when you bite it. No one speaks. Your breath fogs as you chew. Outside, the town is still quiet. This is the hour before people make themselves seen, before faces are scrubbed, before cloaks are arranged to hide holes, before the public mask of getting through it is put on. You say your thanks with a nod, pull on your still damp boots, and duck back outside into the wind. It bites, not in a poetic way. It actually stings, sharp and metallic, like tiny needles pricking the skin. Your fingers, barely warm from being tucked under your armpits all night, go stiff within minutes. You walk fast, not to go somewhere, but to stop your joints from locking. You pass by the same squatting woman from last night. She's up right now, muttering again, now holding a tiny clay pot filled with something smoking. Probably dried herbs, maybe something stronger. Some people swear a little sage smoke keeps illness away, or at least keeps the devil distracted long enough for you to light a fire. Your path winds past cottages now fully awake. Some have opened shutters, not because the view is pleasant, but to let smoke out. One window you pass has frost on the inside, delicate feathers of ice blooming across the glass. The inside. You reach another home, slightly better than the one you slept in, but not by much. The door creaks open on its own with the push of wind. Inside is a different scene. A family of 6 in a single room, bundled tightly on a wooden platform raised just enough off the floor to avoid ground damp. You're invited in, not because you're a guest, but because you're bringing warmth. One more body means one more shared breath, and shared breath means survival. This family sleeps in what's called a box bed, a wooden structure like a wardrobe laid on its side, with shutters to close you in. Think of it as coffin you volunteer for nightly. It traps heat well, but also smells like socks and damp wool. You crawl in with them because modesty died about 8 winters ago. You take the spot nearest the shutters, which means you'll catch most of the draft, but also get first chance at escaping when someone farts. The straw mattress inside is thin, but at least it's dry. Someone hands you a rag-stuffed pillow. The father of the house jokes that it's filled with chicken dreams. It's not much, but even small jokes feel warmer than fire some days. No one asks your name, no one needs to. In the Middle Ages, survival isn't a story you tell. It's something you do silently, breath by frozen breath. Once inside the boxed bed, time does something strange. It doesn't move forward so much as fold in on itself. Minutes stretch, then disappear entirely. It's not sleep exactly, just long drifting blinks between shivers. Someone's elbow digs into your ribs. A baby whimpers. There's a sour smell you can't place. You try not to breathe too deeply. Eventually someone opens the shuttered doors to the bed, and light floods in. Not sunlight, just the dull grey haze of late morning. But it's brighter than the blackness inside. Everyone groans like they've just been disturbed from a 2-day feast. You shuffle out one by one, knees cracking, spines hunched. No one really slept, but they did what they had to. The mother pokes at the fire. They've saved one half-burned log from yesterday, nestled in a bed of ash. She blows gently, coaxing it like a fussy baby. A few sparks blink awake. Then, using a twisted rope dipped in lard, her slow match, she transfers the flame to a small pile of kindling. The flame stutters, catches. Everyone watches in absolute silence, like it's a holy thing, because it is. The warmth hits fast and small. It doesn't reach your toes, but your face tingles as the blood comes rushing back. You cup your hands around the little blaze and feel that strange giddy ache as sensation returns, like pins and needles dipped in soup. You welcome it. Someone hangs a battered iron pot over the flame and drops in water, onions, a scrap of turnip, maybe half a garlic clove. That's breakfast. By the time the steam curls up, it smells like something luxurious. You're handed a small wooden bowl, no spoon. You slurp, careful not to spill a drop. It's barely more than hot water with flavour, but in this moment, it's ambrosia. The family talks now, softly. Bits of gossip, plans for the day. One boy has to fetch more firewood from the communal pile, if there's any left. Another has to check on the neighbour's goats. The father plans to barter for more lard, maybe with the spare wool stocking he's been hiding behind the chimney. The mother wipes soot from the baby's nose and hums. You help where you can. You shake out the straw bed, sweep ash toward the hearth, patch a hole in your sleeve with someone's borrowed needle and thread. All the while, your mind stays half-focused on the next night, because no matter how much warmth you gather now, the cold will be back, and you'll need to find another place to sleep. Someone jokes that you can always try the church porch if you get desperate. The saints won't turn you away, the father chuckles. They just won't keep you warm. Still, it's a thought. You've heard that some clever folk sleep on the stone benches outside the apse, curled beneath animal skins and old cloaks, using body heat and prayer to get them through till dawn. One man even swears he lines his tunic with goose feathers. Not sewn in, just stuffed down the neck like a pillow. Says it works. Looks ridiculous. Before you go, the mother presses something into your hand. A linen scrap. Inside is a bit of tallow, cheap candle fat. Not to eat, not to burn. She whispers that if you rub it on your fingertips before bed, it might stop the skin from cracking in the night. You tuck it in your pouch and thank her, and when you step back outside into the wind, into the hard grey light of a medieval winter morning, you carry more than just that cloth. You carry the memory of flickering fire, sour soup, the scratch of straw, the stink of 7 bodies curled together in the dark. It wasn't comfort, but it was survival. The next night falls harder. By the time dusk rolls in again, the frost is already creeping up the insides of doors, feathering the edges of windows and turning every bucket of water into a drumskin of ice. You've walked the better part of the afternoon looking for work, or just for a warm place to sit. But now, as the town yawns into silence, you find yourself back where all warmth begins and ends in the Middle Ages, the bed. But this time, it's not yours alone. You find yourself ushered into a different cottage, slightly bigger, slightly louder. The door opens to a burst of laughter and heat, not from a hearth, but from the sheer mass of bodies pressed together in one room. There are at least 10 people, maybe more. It smells like feet, onions, and something sour hanging from the rafters, probably cabbage or salted offal. A dog weaves between legs. Someone farts. No one acknowledges it. Tonight, you're sleeping in the family pile. The mattress is straw-stuffed in a large wooden frame, lined with old linen sacks, and covered with a woolen blanket so stiff from years of use it might stand up on its own. There are no pillows, only limbs, and the rule is simple. You want warmth, you get close. Closer than you're comfortable with. You wedge yourself between 2 strangers. On your left is an older man who smells like horse sweat and pipe ash. On your right, a girl with chapped lips and cold fingers who immediately tucks her feet behind your knees like it's the most natural thing in the world. It is. Someone blows out the tallow lamp. Darkness falls like a curtain, and with it comes the orchestral hum of shared discomfort. Sniffling, teeth clicking, a cough here, a wheeze there. But beneath all that, A steady rhythm, breath, shared breath. It's the only heater you can count on. The bed shifts as people settle. One kid mumbles something in a language you don't recognize. A baby gurgles in the corner, then lets out a short, shrill cry. The mother hushes it instantly with a breast. You close your eyes, though there's no difference between open and closed in this blackness. You listen, and then someone snores, not gently. It's a full, wet, rattling growl that shakes the bed frame. A few groans ripple through the pile. Someone jabs the offender. The snoring pauses, then returns, louder. You consider rolling away, but there's no away. There's only deeper in. You curl tighter. Eventually, your breathing sinks with the strangers beside you. Heat builds slowly, pooled between thighs and tucked elbows. The girl beside you, probably 12, rests her forehead against your shoulder. Not affection, necessity. You start to drift. And just before sleep takes you, someone murmurs something you barely catch. Don't turn your back. That's how toes go black. You keep facing inward. Somewhere in the night, the line between warmth and suffocation blurs. You wake, not from sound, but from heat. Not the cozy kind. The sticky, breath on your neck, sweat on skin kind that makes you question whether freezing might have been preferable after all. You're trapped between the girl's icy toes pressed against your thigh and the old man's bony elbow jammed into your back. Every time someone shifts, the blanket lifts just enough to let a dagger of cold air in, then slaps down again, sealing it all like a clam. A loud cough shakes the far end of the bed. Not the dry kind. Wet. Deep. The kind you've heard before in people who don't see the spring. No one says anything, but you can feel it. Everyone heard it. Everyone's counting how far away they are from it. Someone whispers, "Cover your mouth," but it's barely more than breath. And you realize how terrifying breath can be when you're sharing it with 8 other people, one of whom might be carrying more than just cold fingers. Still, you stay, because the alternative is worse. Later in the night, a different discomfort sets in. You itch, not wildly, just a creeping sensation along your back, your shins, your scalp. You know what it is. Bedbugs. They say you can't freeze them out. They hide deep in the straw during winter, waiting for the warmth of bodies. And now, here you are. Dinner. You resist the urge to scratch. Movement invites cold. And worse, it shifts the weight of the blanket and opens negotiations with the person beside you about whose hip gets to enjoy the warm spot. You lose. Her elbow claims it instantly. Your hip sighs into the chill. You lie awake for a while, listening again. There are sounds you only hear in a pile like this. Sleep murmurs, teeth grinding, the peculiar wet smacking sound of someone dreaming about food. You wonder, vaguely, what they're eating. Boiled turnip, a fat golden pie. Someone groans in pleasure, then someone else groans in pain. They might be the same person. You'll never know. Eventually you sleep again, not because you're comfortable, but because your brain gives up. Your body shuts down like a merchant stall at dusk. Sleep isn't rest here, it's escape. When you wake, the room is blue with morning light, the kind that promises nothing but another grey day. Your limbs are tangled. Someone drooled on your sleeve. The girl beside you is gone. You don't remember her leaving. You sit up slowly. Your back cracks like old timber. There's movement in the room. Someone rekindling the fire, someone else groaning as they pull on stiff boots. A dog sneezes near the door, and then you see it. A bucket in the corner, half full of yellow liquid rimmed with ice. No one went outside last night. You suppress a shudder. Not from cold this time, but from the realization that this is normal. You thank your hosts, quietly, and slip back into your cloak. It's still damp. You tie it tighter anyway. Outside, the air greets you like a slap, but you're alive. And in the Middle Ages, that means the bed did its job, even if you shared it with bedbugs, coughs and strangers who might not make it to spring. You try not to need the privy. Really, you do. Most people in town prefer to hold it until morning, not because they're disciplined, but because answering nature's call after dark in the Middle Ages is a gamble, a cold, dangerous, humiliating gamble. But tonight you lose. It starts as a dull ache. You shift under your borrowed blanket, clench your teeth and breathe shallowly. Maybe it'll pass. Maybe you can sweat it out. But it doesn't. The pressure builds like a kettle on the hearth, hissing, relentless. Your bladder's made the decision for you. So you sit up. No one else stirs. The room is quiet except for soft snoring and the occasional creak of the roof beams adjusting to the cold. You slide your legs over the edge of the straw bed and instantly regret it. The floor is freezing. Stone. Not even rushes in this house. Just your bare feet on icy rock. Your toes curl instinctively, as if trying to lift themselves off the surface. It doesn't help. You grope for your cloak. It's not warm. It never is anymore, but at least it hides your shivering. You clutch it tight and tiptoe toward the door, trying not to knock over the kettle or step on the dog. The door is swollen in its frame from moisture, and it takes all your weight to pull it open. It moans like a sick ox, and you wince. But no one wakes. Not yet. Outside, it's worse. The wind hits you like a slap across the mouth, wet, bitter, and personal. Your eyes water instantly. The moon is high, a blurry disk behind a veil of mist. Frost crunches under your feet. You slip once but catch yourself against the wall. The urge is growing urgent now, and you limp toward the back of the yard where the privy sits like a crooked tombstone. It's just a wooden box with a door. No insulation, no candle, no dignity. You open it and stare into the dark maw of the pit. You hope it's deep. You don't want to see or smell, but of course you do. The stench slaps you back a full step. It's a special kind of medieval punishment, the combination of filth, ammonia, and mildew that steams faintly even in the cold. Your stomach lurches. You gag. But your body has no time for complaints. You squat anyway, balancing on numb toes, clutching the door frame to keep from falling in. And that's when you notice it. Eyes. Not human, reflective, low to the ground, watching from the edge of the garden. A cat. A rat. You can't tell. You pray it's not a badger. Someone once told you about a man who lost a toe that way. You clench your jaw and finish quickly. When you're done, you pull up your layers with shaking fingers and stumble back toward the house. Your legs are stiff, your rear colder than your nose, and your pride fully gone. The door's still ajar. You slip inside and close it behind you, trying not to let in too much of the outside with you, but it's too late. A gust follows, and someone coughs in their sleep. You dive back under the covers, praying the warmth hasn't all leaked out. Too late. It's like sliding into a cave full of cold dough. You curl in a ball, knees to chest, shaking, and swear to never drink that much ale again. But you will, because when it's cold, and the walls are thin, and your breath fogs in your own home, warm ale feels like hope, even if it sends you crawling to a frozen outhouse at 2 a.m. Back under the covers, it takes longer than expected to stop trembling. You press your legs against whoever's closest, but the warmth's been diluted, your former spot claimed and cooled. No one says anything. They just shift away slightly, not cruelly, just instinctively. That's the deal when you leave the bed in the night. You surrender your heat and your place, and sometimes a little of your dignity too. You try to sleep. Really try. But now there's something else. a quiet gurgle, then a shift, then a long, slow creak of movement in the dark. Someone else is getting up. You crack one eye open and see a silhouette slink toward the corner where a chamber pot sits. You'd seen it earlier, wedged behind a stool, partly hidden by a hanging cloth. You'd hoped you wouldn't need it. You'd hoped no one would. But here it is. And here's the reality. Not everyone braves the outhouse. Some, many in fact, prefer to relieve themselves inside, especially in winter. Especially when the thought of frostbite on exposed skin outweighs any shame. Chamber pots are as common in cottages as cauldrons or candles. In fact, you've even heard of wealthier homes with embroidered fabric covers for their pots to hide them in plain sight. One lady reportedly had hers painted with a pastoral scene. Nothing says refinement like urinating into an image of sheep. Tonight there's no embroidery. Just the scratch of a chamber pot being dragged from under a stool and a quiet, awkward shuffle of layers being adjusted. The person squatting is likely hoping no one is awake, and you, pretending to sleep, offer them that gift. Then comes the sound. A trickle, faint at first, then steadier. A pause, then a muffled thud as the lid is placed back on. The figure returns to bed without a word, and the room absorbs the secret. You roll over, pulling the blanket to your chin, and try to forget it. But there's no forgetting chamber pots in winter. They're not emptied till morning. Not in the dark, and not when the path to the cesspit or midden is slippery and frozen solid. That means the pot stays in the corner, gradually growing warmer in scent even as the room gets colder in air. A kind of paradox you didn't expect. You remember one man in the market who claimed his cousin kept a flat stone by the hearth at night just to set the chamber pot on, so the pea don't turn to ice by morning. That same cousin apparently once used the frozen contents to patch a drafty hole in the wall. You don't know if that story's true, but you don't want to find out. Sometime later, the baby starts crying. Not a soft whimper this time, a full-throated angry howl, a protest against the cold, against hunger, against the injustice of existence. The mother stirs, mutters something half-soothing, half-exhausted, and the room lurches awake for a moment. People grunt. Someone coughs. The baby doesn't stop. Eventually she lifts it from its spot in the blankets and tucks it under her gown, skin to skin. It quiets, not from comfort, but from survival. That warmth is more than maternal. It's literal life support. You close your eyes again, pressing your own hands between your thighs for warmth, and wait for sleep to return. And even though the air stinks faintly of the pot, and the straw itches, and your toes feel like small stones, you are, in the quietest, most reluctant way, thankful. Because you're inside. Because you're not out by the wall or under a bridge or curled in a barn corner. Because in the Middle Ages surviving the night is more than enough. By now you've learned that in the Middle Ages the hearth isn't just where the fire lives, it's where life itself clings on. Tonight, you're lucky. You're offered a space near the hearthstone, close enough to feel its breath, but not so close that you'll wake up with scorched eyebrows. It's a coveted spot. Not because it's comfortable, it isn't, but because, in a house where everything else freezes, this is the only patch of earth that fights back. The family that takes you in tonight is large and loud. Half their children are already asleep, stacked like timber on a narrow bench along the wall. The others squabble over who gets to sleep closest to the fire. You don't argue. You just fold yourself into a corner near the hearth, knees to your chest, head resting on your arms. The fire is mostly coals now, red and sullen under a blanket of ash. The mother prods it with a blackened iron poker, stirring up a few sparks that rise like fireflies before vanishing. Then she adds a few splinters of kindling, not logs. Those are saved for cooking. Tonight, warmth comes in thin, popping sticks that burn fast and mean. Above the hearth hangs a pot. It's empty now, but you can smell what was there earlier. Onion, barley, maybe a shred of something once alive. The scent still clings to the stones, mixing with smoke and soot and the wet wool steaming off the family's cloaks. Your throat burns slightly from it, but you say nothing. You've learned better. They offer you a crust of bread, blackened on one side from being toasted on the hearthstone itself. You take it gratefully, and it warms your fingers just enough to loosen their curl. You gnaw it slowly, letting the heat from your mouth soften the stale edges. No one speaks. Everyone is listening. To the crackle, to the wind outside, to the occasional hiss when snowmelt drips through the roof onto the hot stone. The fire's small, too small, and you soon understand the other rule of the hearth. The closer you get, the colder your back becomes. You're never fully warm. One side roasts, the other freezes. So you rotate slowly, like meat on a spit. First knees toward the fire, then your back, then your side. It's a dance, and everyone else is doing it too. You notice something else, soot. It clings to everything. Your hands, your sleeves, your lips if you're careless. The children's faces are streaked with it, especially the youngest who sleeps nearest the hearth. His nostrils are ringed in black. You wonder how long it'll take before it works its way into your lungs. You've heard of black lung, though no one calls it that here. They just call it coughing. Still, you keep close, because the hearth means life. In some homes you've heard they build a wooden box near the hearth just for the smallest children. Not a cradle exactly, but a kind of scorched nest, so they don't roll into the fire but still feel its heat. One woman said she stuffed the sides with clay to stop sparks from catching the straw. It didn't always work. You glance at the boy sleeping closest. His hair is singed at the ends. You don't ask. The fire flares once, unexpectedly, and for a moment everyone leans in, eyes wide and greedy. Heat. Glorious, brief, crackling heat. Then it dies back again, and so does everyone else. At some point in the night, you wake coughing. Not gently, not politely. A deep, raw, hacking cough that scrapes its way up from the pit of your chest like it's trying to climb out of you. Your throat burns, your eyes sting. You sit up, dazed, only to realize the smoke hasn't risen. It's sunk. The fire, once low and sleepy, has smouldered itself into a thick, choking fog that hovers just above the floor like a ghost that refuses to leave. You're not the only one. All around you, the children are coughing too. One child, maybe 6 years old, is wheezing in his sleep, the kind of slow, sticky sound that sounds far too old for such a small body. His mother stirs and fans the air with a piece of cloth, uselessly. The smoke doesn't move, it just folds and thickens. Someone opens the door briefly. A blast of cold air surges in like a predator. The smoke wafts out in a sudden gust, curling into the night. The fire hisses in protest. So do the children. But for a moment, you all breathe again. Then the door slams shut, and the cycle begins anew. The hearth, for all its blessings, is treacherous. Many die beside it, not from flame, but from what the flame leaves behind. Soot, smoke, ash in the lungs. You remember a tale you once heard about a baby who died in her sleep, not from the cold, but from the weight of smoke pressing down on her face for hours. The fire wasn't even burning, just smouldering, but the embers whispered poison. Still, you stay close, because cold kills faster. By now, the fire has collapsed into a few glowing lumps of charcoal. One of the older children nudges a fresh splinter into the ashes, hoping it'll catch. It doesn't. He spits on it, out of habit, maybe superstition, and tries again. Nothing. He curses under his breath and pulls the blanket tighter around his shoulders. You recognize the look in his eyes. It's the same look you had last week when your own fingers stayed blue into the afternoon. Someone in the room passes you a stone. It's still faintly warm. wrapped in cloth and smelling faintly of grease and ash. A hearthstone. Earlier they would have placed it near the fire, rotated it through the flames, and wrapped it for use in bed. Some people even slip them inside their tunics, tied with a belt around the waist to radiate heat into their bellies. Tonight, it's your turn. You press it to your chest. It's heavier than it looks, and the heat, faint as it is, feels miraculous. You almost cry, not from pain, from the realization that someone thought to pass it to you, the outsider. They didn't have to. You clutch it tight. The room quiets again. Sleep returns in small pieces. A snore here, a murmur there. Someone sucks their thumb audibly in the corner. A dog lets out a low growl in his sleep, dreaming of something worth barking at. You lie down again, this time on your side, cradling the stone like a swaddled baby. It smells awful, but it's warm, and that makes it sacred. In the Middle Ages, comfort isn't measured in softness or space. It's a matter of proximity to fire, to breath, to skin, to kindness. You close your eyes, soot on your cheeks, warmth pressed to your ribs. And for now, just for a few precious hours, you're safe. Tonight the stone floor is not yours. You've made it into a manor house, lucky perhaps or cursed depending on your rank. You're not the guest of honour, not even a servant with a bed of your own. You're the extra hand, the tag-along, the "we'll find a spot for you" sort. And that spot, it's in the Great Hall. The ceiling soars above like the belly of a ship turned inside out. The fire burns in a massive hearth, bigger than your entire cottage back home. It should be warm. It should be luxury. It isn't. The fire burns hot, yes, but only at its feet. Step away a few paces and the cold swallows you again like a tide. You've learned by now, size doesn't mean comfort. A bigger house only means bigger drafts. Here, every archway breathes, every window leaks, every stone underfoot holds the chill of decades. You find a place near the wall, just out of the way. The rushes on the floor are fresh, cut and strewn with dried herbs like lavender and marjoram. They smell nice, but don't be fooled. They're not there for comfort. They're there to soak up what people leak, spill, or drop. They'll be filthy by morning. You curl onto your side, pulling your cloak over your head, using a small bundle of extra fabric as a pillow. It's someone's discarded tunic, still damp at the collar. You don't ask whose. The fire crackles across the room, throwing tall, flickering shadows on the timber beams. But from where you lie, it might as well be a candle. Your face feels the cold. So does your chest. You tuck your hands between your thighs, trying to trap whatever warmth your own body can generate. You're not alone here. Other servants lie nearby, curled like question marks beneath cloaks and burlap. A few of them mutter in their sleep. One is snoring softly. Another mumbles something, maybe a prayer, maybe a list of chores. It's hard to tell in the dark. A rat scurries past the base of the wall. Then another. You hear them squeak, then vanish into the rushes. One of them has found a crust of something. They fight over it in a blur of movement and noise, then disappear again. You pull your cloak tighter, not from fear, from familiarity. You've seen worse. Somewhere above you, on the floor of the upper chambers, the gentry sleep in curtained beds warmed with stone jars and lined with fur. You can almost hear the thud of a servant setting down a warming pan. Their windows have shutters. Their beds have hangings to trap the heat. One might even have a feather mattress. You, meanwhile, have your back against stone. One of the footboys shivers beside you and curses under his breath. He's maybe 12. You pass him a fold of your cloak. It's not generous, you need him warm too. Body heat, as always, is shared by necessity, not kindness. The door at the far end of the hall creaks open. A blast of night air slips in, sharp as a blade. Everyone groans or flinches in their sleep. A kitchen maid enters, carrying a bundle. You pretend to, sleep, eyes half-lidded. She sets something near the fire, probably food for tomorrow's breakfast. Then she's gone. The door slams shut. Silence again, except for the soft drip of melted snow from someone's boots drying by the hearth. You close your eyes. You're in a stone hall the size of a cathedral, lying in a bed of the herbs and crumbs, and yet you're better off than many. At least tonight no snow will fall on your face. Sleep in the great hall is a fragile thing. You doze, but never deeply. Each sound startles you half awake. The clink of iron cooling in the hearth, the snort of someone dreaming of food, the echoing groan of old beams overhead. Even in your half-sleep you're aware of the cold creeping into your bones, seeping up from the stone like it's alive and vengeful. And just when you start to drift off again, something brushes your face. You jolt, sit up too fast, heart thudding, and find yourself eye to eye with a mouse, or perhaps something slightly larger. It stares at you with bold black eyes, utterly unimpressed, before scurrying off into the rushes like this is its house, and you're the visitor. You lie back down. The fire is just embers now. They pulse red and low, like the heartbeat of something dying slowly. The warmth doesn't reach you anymore. You've rolled so far from it in your sleep that now your nose is cold, your lips dry, and your knees ache from staying bent too long. You try to stretch them, but that lets cold air under your cloak. You decide the pain is better. In your peripheral vision, someone else moves. A figure, tall, deliberate, makes its way across the room with quiet steps. One of the higher servants, perhaps. You watch as they kneel near the hearth and open a small chest tucked behind it. Inside, logs, real logs, good, seasoned oak, not splinters, not straw. This is luxury. They choose one carefully and lay it on the embers like a parent tucking in a child. Within seconds it catches, flames blooming up like a sigh of relief. The sudden glow fills the hall, and for a brief sacred moment you can see everyone, every sleeping servant, every rat, every threadbare cloak, a whole room of people trying not to freeze. Then the figure shuts the chest and disappears again. You wonder, did they steal that log? Were they allowed? Does it matter? You start to feel your toes again. They sting. That's good. The boy beside you mutters in his sleep and shifts closer. You don't stop him. In fact, you edge even closer to him too. There's no shame in the shuffle. Everyone is doing it. You've heard stories of castle servants who sleep 5 to a blanket in winter, lined up like firewood. Not because they like each other, but because nobody wants to be the one on the edge, the one whose back faces the cold. One man even claimed he used to sleep with a goose in the bed. Not for company, but because the bird's body heat was better than a wool cloak. You believe it. The fire crackles again. You catch yourself smiling in the dark. Not because anything is funny, but because you realise something. You haven't shivered in a few minutes. Your jaw has unclenched. Your fingers have uncurled. That's not comfort. That's victory. And as your eyelids start to grow heavy again, the familiar smells of the hall drift in. Roasting ashes, dog hair, dried herbs trampled underfoot, and something faintly sour. You breathe it in like perfume, because this is warmth, because you've known worse, because tomorrow you might be out in the snow again, but for tonight the fire lives, and so do you. Upstairs, where the air doesn't move and the rugs actually touch the floor, the bed's different. Tonight, by some twist of luck, or maybe misfortune, you're summoned to help the steward carry warming pans to the upper chambers. The manners lady is retiring early, and the bed must be prepared. You've seen the pans before, but never held one, until now. The steward hands you a brass one, heavy and hot. A long-handled, shallow container, shaped like a squat kettle, filled with smouldering coals. He warns you, don't tilt it, don't touch the lid, and for heaven's sake, don't scorch the sheets. Someone once set the footman's blanket on fire last winter. Still got the burn mark on his ankle. You follow him up the narrow servant staircase, your breath fogging as you go. The stairwell is stone and colder than the hall below. It's only once you reach the upper corridor, planked with oak and carpeted with age, that you feel the temperature rise, not by much, but just enough to notice. The lady's chamber is large and dim, lit by 2 candles and the orange flicker of a fireplace that's more ceremonial than useful. It gives off light, not heat. You can tell by the frost spidering across the inside of the glass window despite the blaze. The bed is enormous. 4 posts rise like tree trunks, draped in dark velvet curtains lined with fur. The blankets are layered, linen, wool, silk, and, at the very top, what looks like fox fur. The mattress is stuffed not with straw but feathers. Actual feathers. Geese must have wept to fill that bed. You're waved forward. Now comes the ritual. The warming pan is gently opened and slid beneath the sheets, moved in slow, deliberate strokes. Up one side, down the other. The steward hums as he works, something tuneless and bored. You mimic him, careful not to scorch anything. The bed creaks faintly under the motion, and smoke curls up from the open lid of the pan like a ghost trying to escape. When you're done, the bed is puffed, scented faintly of lavender and steaming gently at the edges. You step back. The lady enters. She doesn't acknowledge you. She wears a nightgown finer than any cloak you've ever owned, lined at the sleeves with white fur. Her slippers are made of something you can't name. She slips into bed with practiced ease, the kind of movement that assumes safety, assumes comfort. Her maid draws the curtains closed. Darkness swallows her whole. You and the steward leave silently. Back in the corridor, he lets out a sigh that says more than words. You follow him to the next chamber, the master's room. Another bed, another pan, another round of care for someone who will sleep warm and rise rested. You ask softly if anyone ever sleeps in those beds without warming pans. He looks at you and laughs. Only once. By the time you return the warming pan to the kitchen, the coals inside have cooled to a stubborn grey. You tap out the ash, careful not to breathe too deeply as it puffs up in a soft cloud. The cook waves you off when you try to help clean. Go sleep before you burn the next mattress, she grumbles, though there's no heat in it, only the worn voice of someone who's seen one too many winters and too few full logs. But sleep isn't coming easy. You've seen something tonight that doesn't leave you. That bed upstairs, so massive it could sleep 5, yet curtained off like a coffin. So warm it needs coals to be cooled down before a body touches it. And yet, somehow, so distant from life. The servant's hearth may be smoky and rough, but at least it's real. It breathes, it stings, it remembers you. The upstairs rooms feel like museums, or tombs with feather pillows. You wander back to the lower levels and find a corner near the scullery to lie down, between a basket of root vegetables and a barrel that smells suspiciously like spoiled brine. It's cold, but not empty. You tuck your arms under your back and your knees to your chest, trying to conserve what little warmth you have left. As you settle, your mind drifts to something you overheard earlier. A footman joked that the lady of the house sleeps with a scented linen sachet tied to her wrist, not for protection or health, but to avoid smelling the servants as they pass her bedchamber. She can't stand the smell of feet, he laughed, though she's never touched earth with her own. The thought sits heavy. You think of your own feet, cracked, red, half frozen. You've stuffed rags inside your shoes so many times they've moulded into your soles. You haven't smelled lavender in months. Your hands still hold the faint trace of smoke from the warming pan. Even your breath smells of barley and soot. But you're here. You're not behind silk curtains. You're behind barrels. And somehow, you wouldn't trade places. Because all the luxury upstairs can't erase the truth that warmth, in its most honest form, isn't found in down feathers or imported sachets. It's in the shuffle of bodies sharing a single wool blanket, in the hiss of spit on a stubborn ember, in the rough joke whispered near the hearth, half choked by coughing but still shared. Someone nearby coughs in their sleep, a rough barking sound. You hope it's not deep in the lungs. You hope they make it to spring. You pull your cloak tighter, roll to your side, and let the chill settle around you like an old friend. Not welcome exactly, but familiar. And as your breath slows, and the coals in your mind fade to dull orange, you wonder, do the ones upstairs ever feel the cold the way you do? Or is that warmth just another kind of silence? You don't wake up indoors. This time, you open your eyes to the musty darkness of a hayloft, the thick scent of old straw and animal musk pressing down like an extra blanket. A sneeze builds and you clamp it back. Too loud, and you risk being discovered. This place isn't yours. Not really. You slipped in after dusk, unnoticed by the stable boy who'd gone off to steal a nap near the kitchen fire. You won't be here long. Just long enough to survive the night. The hay pricks at your neck and works its way into your sleeves, but you don't dare shift too much. You've burrowed yourself into the mound, trying to mimic the warmth of a swaddled calf. And it's working, mostly. The hay traps the heat from your own body, holding it close like a secret. Your legs are warmer than they've been in days. Your back, however, remains cold. The loft boards beneath you are chilled through. Below, in the stalls, the horses snort and shift in their sleep. You listen to the rhythm of their movements, hooves scraping wood, tails swishing lazily, the occasional heavy breath steaming in the air. There's something comforting about it. They're warm creatures, powerful too, and tonight they are the only living things in this manor richer than the master's family upstairs, at least in heat. You peek through a slat in the loft wall. Outside, the moon is pale and distant, casting a bluish glaze across the frozen yard. There's no sound of wind, only stillness, the kind that freezes milk in buckets and stiffens laundry into boards. You're glad to be in here, wrapped in stolen hay and shadow. Somewhere to your right, a sound, movement. You freeze. Then, whispered laughter, a boy's voice, followed by the rustling of straw. You've been discovered. But it's not the farmer or his son. It's another stowaway. He's maybe your age, maybe younger, wrapped in what looks like an old potato sack and a sheep's wool cloak. He's chewing on something, a bit of dried apple, judging by the smell. And when he sees you, he grins like you've just made his night less boring. No alarm, no shouting, just a nod. Then he lies back down. You lie in silence for a while, unsure if you should sleep or flee. Then he speaks again, softly. You warm? You shrug beneath the hay. Better than last night, he says. Last night I tried sleeping under the bridge. Woke up with my boots frozen to the stones. He chuckles. You don't. He keeps talking, quietly, like sharing stories is another form of warmth. He tells you about a trick he learned from an old woman in the hills. Bury hot coals inside a box filled with ash and hay. Wrap your feet around it and you've got heat till morning. He says she called it a hay box stove. You've heard the term before but never seen one. Sounds like magic, or at least hope. You ask him if it really works. He grins again. Once burned off my toenail, but it works. You both laugh, muffled and brief, careful not to spook the horses. Outside the night stretches on, long and cold. Inside, two strangers share stolen straw, breath, and barnyard wisdom, and somehow, in this heap of prickly hay and whispered tales, you feel safer than you have in weeks. The barn boy sleeps fast. One moment he's muttering something about a pig that snores louder than his uncle. The next his breath has slowed and deepened, fingers curled into the hay like roots. You lie beside him, eyes open, ears tuned to the stillness. It's not that you can't sleep. It's that you don't quite trust it here. The hay is warm, yes, but only in the way a fire is warm when you're too tired to feed it. You have to hold still, stay curled, breathe shallow, or the heat will vanish like mist. And beneath the softness there are hard truths, mice, fleas, and the creeping suspicion that something might be watching you from the rafters. An owl maybe, or worse, something with smaller eyes and more legs. You shift slightly, digging your feet deeper into the straw, and find something unexpected. A warmer patch. You push further and your toes meet. A stone? No, an old brick, half wrapped in cloth, still faintly warm. The barn boy wasn't lying. He'd made a haybox stove. Primitive, yes, but clever. The brick must have been baked in the kitchen fire hours ago, wrapped in ash and tucked under hay to hold the heat. It's barely radiating now, but in the cold of the barn it feels like summer. You pull your feet around it, knees drawn tight to your chest, and finally, you stop shivering. For a while, you just lie there and listen. The horses shift below. Somewhere in the darkness, a hen clucks in her sleep. And near the far end of the barn, you hear a soft, slow drip. Meltwater from a day-old patch of snow, sliding off the rafters in glacial patience. You start to drift. And in the space between wakefulness and dreams, your mind wanders to another rumour, a strange one, told in the muddy lanes outside the tanner's yard, that in some towns people take turns sleeping in barns not for warmth alone, but for the smell. The warm, earthy stink of hay, manure and horses somehow wards off the night chills. They believe sickness slips in only when a room smells too clean, too open. You remember laughing when you heard that, but now, with your face buried in the hay, the barn's sour musk in your nostrils, you're not so sure it's wrong. The barn boy stirs, then mutters in his sleep. Don't roll near the wall. Cold climbs through it. You don't answer, but you inch away from the boards all the same. It's true, the air there bites sharper. The wood, even dry, is cold as stone, and cold has a way of moving through contact, creeping from surface to skin like ivy seeking sun. You settle again, wrapped in a sack dusted in hay, knees pressed to a lukewarm brick that smells like soot and ash. Somewhere far off, a rooster clears its throat but thinks better of it. Not time yet. You close your eyes. Tonight you're not indoors, but you're not outside either. You're in the in-between. The space peasants know best. Neither warm nor freezing, neither guest nor thief, just another body seeking another night. And in the Middle Ages, that's enough. The monastery doesn't sleep, at least not like the rest of the world does. Tonight you find yourself tucked behind the cold stone walls of a Benedictine cloister, where the rhythm of life is marked not by sun or hunger, but by bells. Bells at dawn, bells at prayer, bells at midnight. The brothers rise when the world sleeps and sleep when the world stirs. And in the bitter cold of winter, that pattern doesn't bend. It just freezes. You're not a monk, but you're allowed to stay the night, just one. A lay brother took pity on your wind-chapped face and frostbitten knuckles, said there was room in the scriptorium, a fire, maybe even soup, so here you are. You walk past rows of sleeping monks wrapped in woolen habits, lined shoulder to shoulder on planks barely raised off the ground. No pillows, no privacy. The breath in the room hangs in faint clouds over each body. There's no talking, only the scrape of sandals, the creak of wood, and the soft crackle of fire behind the tapestries. The scriptorium isn't as warm as you'd imagined. It's lit by candles, and by one trembling fire set into a carved hearthstone that hasn't seen real fuel in days. The heat is barely enough to keep ink from freezing. You shiver as you step inside. A brother nods to you, wordless, and gestures toward a bench near the wall. You take your seat and wrap your cloak tighter. In the centre of the room, 2 monks work by lamplight. They're copying a psalter, one holding a quill so fine it might be made from hair, the other bent over an open page, muttering Latin under his breath as he checks for errors. The vellum is cold to the touch. They dip their pens into ink pots that have been wrapped in wool and buried in ash to keep them fluid. The trick works. Barely. The monk beside you passes a note. Do not breathe too heavily. The ink will blur. You hold your breath as long as you can. Outside, the bells chime softly for matins. The brothers rise in silence and drift toward the chapel like shadows. You don't follow, not out of disrespect, but because you've only just begun to thaw. Your fingers sting where the blood returns. You press them under your arms, curling into yourself on the wooden bench like a barn cat. The fire flares once, then falters. The scriptorium dims. You hear footsteps return, bare feet, cloth shuffling across stone, and then the sound of soft chanting rising from the hallway. It's not meant for you, it's meant for God. But still, it comforts you. They say that monks used to sleep in shifts, not for the cold, but because prayer had to be constant, that the devil walked most freely between midnight and dawn. And so, in some monasteries, a brother would always be awake, always be watching, always stoking the coals. You wonder now if the devil was cold, or maybe, just maybe, cold was the devil. When the chanting fades, so does the fire. You're left with a thin line of embers and the soft ticking of cooling wood. The scriptorium feels heavier now. The warmth that hovered earlier has dissolved into the stone walls, and the air has turned thick with candle smoke and the slow, musty breath of parchment. You shift on the bench, stiff from stillness, trying to find a position that doesn't make your spine ache. The monk beside you sighs and dips his quill again. You watch the way his fingers tremble, not from fear or fatigue, but from cold. His hands are red and cracked, the skin between his knuckles raw from ink and winter air, yet he doesn't stop. He drags the quill slowly across the page, forming letters with painful precision. Each stroke is an act of faith and frostbite. You wonder if the ink ever freezes. He leans closer to the page and lifts a small terracotta cup from the floor, gently cradling it in his hands. Not to drink, to warm his fingers. It's filled with warm sand, still faintly steaming from the hearth. You've never seen such a thing before, a monk's version of a hand warmer. He catches you watching, smiles faintly, and places the cup between you. You wrap your hands around it instantly. It's not hot, but it's warm enough to make your palms ache as feeling returns. You nod in thanks. He says nothing. Words cost breath, and breath is warmth. The candle between you gutters. You hold your hand near the flame, not close enough to burn, just close enough to pretend. The shadows on the wall grow longer, bend and curl like branches in a storm. Then a whisper. Some say the saints don't feel the cold. You turn. The monk is still watching the page, eyes narrowed behind a fringe of frost-lined lashes. I think they're wrong, he says. The saints were human first. You nod, quietly. And you think about St. Cuthbert, who once stood waist-deep in the sea and sang prayers until dawn. You think about the stories of monks who wore hair shirts in winter, not to stay warm but to suffer properly, You remember hearing that some believed freezing was holy, that pain purified, that blue lips brought them closer to God. But here in this room, there is no holiness in cold, only cracked ink, numb toes, breaths that hurt to exhale. The monk beside you sneezes quietly, then goes back to copying. You lie down on the bench, pulling your cloak over your face. Your breath pools in the cloth, warming the air just enough to stop the sting. And for the first time tonight, you feel a small flicker of peace, not comfort, not safety, but presence. In the quiet, in the ritual, in the candle that refuses to die, there's a strange kind of resilience. It's not just survival, it's something softer, gentler, a warmth that isn't made of firewood or feathers, but of small mercies passed in silence. You close your eyes, and if the saints really did feel the cold, then maybe they'd understand nights like this. The kitchen smells like ghosts. You step through the back entrance just after dusk, led by a boy no older than 10 with soot on his cheeks and a grin too big for winter. He doesn't say much, just points to a pile of burlap sacks in the corner and mimes sleep with his hands before disappearing down the hallway with a chunk of stale bread in his mouth. You're alone now, but not really, because the kitchen remembers things. It remembers the clatter of iron pots and the hiss of stews too rich for the likes of you. It remembers laughter, once, and shouting mostly. And it remembers warmth, or at least it did. Tonight the hearth is dark, the ovens are quiet, and you are surrounded by slabs, meat slabs. You hadn't expected that. You'd heard that manor kitchens were cool, yes, but no one told you that the pantry could double as an ice house. The air is thick with the chill of preserved flesh. Smoked hams dangle like heavy fists from iron hooks. Fish, dried and salted, hang beside them. Slabs of mutton, partially frozen, sit on wide wooden tables, their surfaces slick with pale grease and congealed drips. Somewhere beneath a cloth, you're certain there's something skinned and headless, staring up from beneath the linen. You inch closer to the hearth, but even the ashes are cold. It hasn't been lit all day. No need berets. The fire is only started before dawn, when the kitchen girls return with buckets and knives and kindling between their teeth. Now it's just you. You find a spot beneath one of the tables and make a nest of the burlap sacks. They smell of onions and old tallow. Better than dung, you think. You wrap your arms around yourself, careful not to brush the hanging meats. They're solid with frost. Touching one feels like leaning against a corpse. The floor is flagstone, and it leaches the heat from your body like it's been trained to do so. You shuffle one of the sacks beneath your hips and pull another over your chest, wishing it were heavier. You wonder if anyone has ever dared to light a small fire here, behind the kitchen barrels, where the smoke might not be noticed. You think about it. Hard, but you don't dare. Not because of the rules, because of the grease. Every surface in the room glistens with a layer of rendered fat, dripped from pans, splashed from ladles, spilled from overboiled pots. It's soaked into the walls, the floor, the wooden beams overhead. A fire here wouldn't warm you. It would engulf you. A single spark would turn this kitchen into a funeral pyre, and not the poetic kind. So you lie still, breathing shallow, trying not to think about the carcass above your head, dripping once every minute, trying not to listen to the creaks of the house settling into the frost, trying not to imagine the rats that surely know this place better than you ever will. And yet, oddly, you're not freezing. Not completely. The thick walls of the kitchen, built to trap coolness in the summer, now hold the cold at bay. There's no wind here, no draft, no open door to suck the warmth from your mouth. It's not warm, but it's stable, predictable. The meat doesn't complain, the stones don't shift, the sacks don't snore or steal your blanket. You've slept worse. You close your eyes, the scent of garlic skins and smoked pork heavy in your lungs, and you wonder, will the kitchen girls scream when they find you in the morning, or will they just step over you like another sack of winter storage? Sometime deep in the night, you wake to the sound of dripping. Not the quiet, patient drip you noticed earlier, but a new one. Faster, closer. You blink and roll onto your back, the burlap sack crinkling beneath you. Your breath ghosts above your face, a little puff of mist in the still air. For a second, you think the pantry walls are weeping. Then you feel it, a soft splash, cold, on your cheek. You sit up sharply. Above you, the slab of mutton, once still, once obedient, is thawing. Not entirely, not dangerously, just enough to weep. Fat melts slower than ice, and the room's warmth, your warmth, has coaxed something loose. The drip lands again, this time on your knee. You shuffle sideways, back pressed to the barrels behind you, startled but too tired to laugh. You look up. The meat sways slightly, disturbed by some subtle shift in the air, or maybe a dreaming rat somewhere in the beams. They move like slow dancers, nodding at you in the dark as if to say, "This is how it is, friend." We all hang on, one cold night at a time. You don't respond. You just pull the sack tighter and rest your head against the barrel. The scent here is stronger. Pickled cabbage, maybe, or apples turned soft. Something fermenting slowly, dreaming of spring, and then you hear it, a tiny rhythmic scratch, not above, below. You freeze. The scratching continues, tiny claws skittering along stone, followed by the faintest squeak. A rat, as expected. Probably two. You remember a story from the last manor you passed through, about a kitchen boy who woke to find a rat chewing on his toe, thinking it was a rind of cheese. He kicked it so hard he broke his ankle. You keep your feet under the sack. They don't approach. Yet. Just watch, waiting for you to die, maybe, or drop a crumb, or shiver loud enough to reveal weakness. Eventually the scratch fades. You hope they've moved on to the bread bin. You close your eyes again. Try to sleep. You dream strange things. You dream of being meat. Not metaphorically, not poetically. Just meat. Hung and salted, safe from the cold, because it no longer matters whether you're cold or not. The body is still. The danger is gone. You are preserved. And when you wake, blinking into the shadows, heart still slow and heavy from sleep, you wonder how many others thought the same, just for a moment, as they froze to death in a corner somewhere, dreaming of stillness. The first light of morning arrives, not with warmth, but with motion. You hear the scuffle of boots, voices, young, brisk, female, the kitchen girls. You scramble up, dust hay and meat grease from your sleeves, and slip toward the rear door before they see you, but not fast enough. One girl catches a glimpse as you duck out. She doesn't shout, she just exhales and mutters. Another one, like you're just part of the room, like you're just one more thing the kitchen must warm, briefly, then forget. You step outside. The air hits like a slap, but you smile, because you made it. And in a room where meat freezes but doesn't rot, that's a victory worth savouring. At first glance, it looks like a miracle. You step out onto the ice, and the world beneath your boots doesn't crack. It rings. The frozen river stretches wide and glittering, lined with stalls and laughter, tents flapping in the wind. The Thames, silent in summer, sluggish in autumn, is now a broad silver street. And tonight, it's alive. They call it the Frost Fair, and they only happen when the freeze is deep enough, long enough, to trust the ice with more than just a fool's curiosity. This year it's thick as a door and harder than iron. A butcher said you could drive a cart across without worry, and someone did. You passed it earlier, a wagon selling roasted chestnuts, its wheels parked right on the river's spine. You walk carefully, though. The truss never goes all the way down to your feet. Around you, people have turned winter into theatre. There's a puppet show near the South Bank where children shriek with glee, chasing shadows across canvas. A shoemaker pounds nails into soles right on the ice. A barmaid in a red bonnet balances 2 tankards of hot spiced ale with the confidence of someone who has definitely slipped before. Every few yards another brazier smokes in the open air. Wood, coal, even dried peat, stolen or paid for, who can tell? It's loud, it's alive, it's warmer here, among the bodies and steam and noise, than in most of the places you've slept this week. But it won't last. That's the truth no one says aloud. Not yet. The freeze will lift. The river will move again. The frost will become slush. The slush become warnings, and someone's stall will fall through before the thaw is done. But not tonight. Tonight you can forget what a cold bed feels like. You buy a meat pie from a vendor who's shivering so hard his hands twitch. He jokes that the warmth is in the crust, not the filling. He's right. You hold it between your palms longer than you eat it, letting the grease soak your gloves. You savour the heat more than the taste. You pass a man etching names into the ice for a penny. Delicate, slow work with a long iron spike. He offers to carve yours, and for a moment you consider it. But no, you don't want to be remembered here. Instead, you follow the smell of roasting fat to a tent lined with rough wool blankets, strung tight between poles that creak in the wind. Inside it's dim, smoky, and full of bodies. A fiddler plays near the centre. Couples dance, stomping on planks laid over the ice to stop it cracking under rhythm. You find a corner, squeeze in beside 2 chimney sweeps, and sit with your knees tucked to your chest. Someone hands you a tin mug of something hot. You don't ask what it is. You drink. It scalds your throat, then floods your chest with fire. You cough. The chimney sweeps laugh. One of them offers you a lump of something wrapped in cloth. Boiled pudding, he says. Stays warm in your pocket all day. You bite it. It's dense and sticky, sweet with treacle and grease. You nearly cry. You're still sitting there licking molasses off your teeth when the wind shifts and the tent flaps open. Outside, the fair is still dancing, but the frost is beginning to whisper. The wind outside sharpens. You step back into it. Mug empty, hands sticky, feet half warm and fading fast. The river groans underfoot, not cracking but speaking. A long, low sound like a yawn beneath your boots. A reminder that this fair, for all its joy and lanterns and laughter, is built on water, and water doesn't forget. Still, no one leaves. You walk along a row of stalls, passing a barber giving frostbitten shaves, a printmaker stamping souvenir leaflets, and a toothless man yelling about roasted eel wrapped in cloth like it's treasure. You pass a cage holding a monkey, teeth bared, shivering in its chain. Its owner calls him King Frost. You don't stop. Then the music fades behind you, and the crowd thins. You reach the darker edge of the fair, where the smoke doesn't rise and the fires don't burn. Here, a few wanderers sit in silence, hoods pulled low, feet curled beneath them, trying to soak up the last heat from stones wrapped in soot-black rags. A woman hums softly to herself, not for joy but to distract her teeth from chattering. You sit near them. No one asks your name. You recognize their faces, not individually, but as a type. The ones who didn't come for cider or skating. The ones who came because the river is safer than the streets tonight. Because the ice, for all its dangers, doesn't charge rent. Because down here, under the lanterns, no one cares if you smell of smoke and boiled onions, or if your boots are held together with string and stubbornness. Someone offers you a blanket. It's stiff with frost, but better than your cloak alone. You curl into it, knees to chest, breath fogging the edge. Someone else passes a tin spoon and a pot of something. Barely soup, mostly water, but warm. You drink, and your fingers sting as the blood begins to move again. You fall asleep like that. Not on purpose, just one moment awake, the next drifting into a half-dream where you're skating, weightless, arms outstretched. The ice beneath you smooth, perfect, no cracks, no creaks, just silence, until a snap. You jerk awake. Not real, just a dream. But nearby someone else heard it too. An old man mutters something, stands and taps the ice with his boot. His daughter, or maybe his granddaughter, tugs at his sleeve. He shakes his head. No, not tonight. Still thick. You close your eyes again, though you keep one ear tuned. Because that's the thing about warmth on ice. It's temporary. The fires melt snow, the snow soaks timber, the timber rots, and one day someone builds a stall too far from the bank. A pot tips, a boot slips, a child vanishes. But not tonight. Tonight, the river holds, the stars blink above, the wind is tired, and the frost fair hums with 100 small acts of defiance, cups shared, cloaks loaned, songs hummed into cupped hands. And though the ground beneath you is nothing but water dressed in armour, you sleep. Because sometimes survival is not a bed of straw or a pile of hay. Sometimes it's a frozen river lit with torches, lined with strangers who know the rules. Keep close, share what burns, and when the ice speaks, listen. You wake to a boot nudging your ribs. Not cruelly, not urgently, just enough to say you can't stay here anymore. The fires are out. The crowd is gone. Only a few silhouettes shuffle in the mist that clings to the river's frozen back like a dying breath. The frost fair is over for the night, or maybe for good. A stall has collapsed in on itself near the edge. Nothing dramatic, just soggy canvas and footprints leading nowhere. You push yourself upright, joints protesting. The blanket someone gave you is already stiff with frost. You peel it off piece by piece like old bark. The old man and his daughter are gone. The monkey is gone. The music is gone. You walk slowly toward the embankment, boots sliding with each step. The river hums under your feet, not the joyful creak of safe ice, but a low, uneasy moan. It's warning you now. The thaw is coming. Time to go. But where? You follow the winding path off the river and into the alleyways behind the fair, where yesterday's laughter doesn't reach. The city folds in around you again, stone and smoke, soot and shadows. You pass a shuttered bakery, its door sealed with ice like wax. You pass a water barrel cracked clean through, and then you see them, huddled beneath the city walls, the outcasts, not just poor, but outside the poor. The ones who have no village to return to, no master, no trade, no charity. A mother sits with a child wrapped in 3 shawls and not enough hope. An old man leans against the wall, lips blue, mouth open. You're not sure if he's asleep or dead. A figure near him stirs the ashes of a fire that no longer smokes. You walk among them like a ghost. No one speaks to you. No one needs to. They've all heard the same story you live by. If you can't find warmth, you borrow it. From breath, from soup, from someone else's fire when their back is turned. A woman nearby clutches something under her cloak. A dog, a pot, a child. She sees you looking and pulls the bundle tighter. It makes no sound. You sit near a pile of bricks and wrap your cloak around yourself again. The wall behind you is cold, colder than ice somehow. The kind of cold that feels personal. A man beside you offers a bit of hard cheese. You take it. Not for the food, but for the gesture. And then he speaks. Used to sleep inside, he says. Back when the mill ran. Had a stove near the stairs. Nothing fancy, but it burned. You nod. He doesn't ask your story. There's a kind of peace here. A terrible, resigned peace. These people have no expectations. They don't dream of feather beds or fur-lined boots. They dream of things that don't burn or break or vanish. They dream of the same fire night after night. A child nearby is coughing, dry and shallow, not the deep rattle of death yet, but close. The mother holds him tighter. You try not to look, but you do. Because this is the truth that no feast on the ice can hide. Some don't survive the night, and in the morning, when frost glitters prettily on their lashes, they will look like they're sleeping. The sun begins to rise, but it brings no warmth, just light. It slants over the city wall in a thin gold blade, slicing across cobblestones and frost-covered blankets. No one stirs. Not first. The cold has pinned them all down like insects in wax. You feel it too. Your legs are stiff. Your hands don't answer when you try to make fists. You sit there, curled like a question, watching the city wake around you. A baker's apprentice slips out of a shop door and starts smashing ice from the trough with a hammer. His breath puffs in great clouds as he works. A cart rattles past, driven by a man in a thick wool coat and 2 dogs trotting behind. They ignore the people by the wall, they always do. Eventually the outcasts begin to move. One by one, like puppets tugged from a string, they rouse themselves. Someone mutters a prayer, someone else curses. One man, wrapped in 3 tunics and no shoes, simply begins to walk. Nowhere in particular, just to keep blood in his feet. You stand too, brushing frost from your cloak. Your breath comes out in a slow fog like a tired sigh. You stretch your arms, wincing as your muscles creak. The man who gave you cheese last night is gone. His place by the bricks is just a shadow now. A few crumbs remain, the generosity of the dead. You make your way toward the edge of the square where a low wall catches the sun. It's slightly warmer there. Not warm, just less cruel. A few others have had the same idea. They sit with their backs to the stone, soaking in whatever heat the day might offer. That's when you see her, an old woman wrapped in a blanket, still as stone. Her head leans gently to one side, her mouth half open. You wait. Someone nudges her shoulder. Nothing. They do it again, harder this time. Her body leans stiffly. But she doesn't move. No one screams. No one wails. They just look away. A young girl comes forward and wordlessly takes the blanket. Not out of disrespect. Out of need. A quiet exchange between the living and the dead. This is how it happens. Not in drama, not in storms, not with bells, but with silence. One less body sharing heat. One less cough in the dark. You walk away because you must, not because it's cold, though it is, but because staying means seeing more, and you've already seen enough for one morning. You pass a priest lighting candles outside the church door, his fingers shaking in the breeze. He nods to you, half aware, already lost in his own ritual. You don't stop. You keep walking, past the stalls, past the fires that never burned, past the frozen puddles that mirror nothing but grey sky. You carry last night with you, the quiet, the shivers, the shared cheese, the unmoving old woman, like stones in your pockets. Not burdens, just truths. You carry them because no one else will. And as you round the corner and disappear back into the city's cold lungs, you don't look back. Because you don't need to. That corner of the wall will be there again tonight, and someone else will be in your place. By midday you feel it in your bones, the kind of ache that no sleep can fix. So you do what most people do on a day like this. You look for something hot to put in your belly. Not food, necessarily, just heat. Liquid, spicy, greasy, anything that pushes the cold back from your ribs for a little while. That's how you find yourself ducking into a side alley, guided by the smell of onions and burning cloves. There, behind a sagging wooden cart draped in a threadbare curtain, an old woman sells broth. She stands behind a dented iron pot the size of a barrel. steam billowing up from it like a beacon. No menu, no choices, just broth. You approach with a few coins, or maybe just a promise, and she hands you a cracked mug, warm to the touch. You don't ask what's in it. It's murky, thin, flecked with oil and something green. Parsley, leek, a sliver of bone floats to the top like a tiny shipwreck. You drink. It burns, not in a bad way, in a necessary way. The heat hits your throat like fire, then spreads outward, down your chest, curling around your stomach like a cat. You breathe through your nose to keep from coughing and immediately regret it. Onions, sharp and raw, flood your sinuses, but your fingers curl tighter around the cup. Around you, others do the same. A stable hand with split knuckles, a girl holding a basket with no handle, a man whose nose is red from more than the cold. All of them sipping in silence, shoulders hunched, eyes closed for a moment, not in prayer, but in pure bodily gratitude. Beside the cart, a boy drops a lump of something into a clay cup, dark, sticky, and glistening. "You tried this?" he asks, grinning. You shake your head. He explains, "Burnt ale. It's exactly what it sounds like. Cheap ale boiled with spices until it thickens. Nutmeg, maybe cinnamon if the cellar's feeling generous. It's sweet and sticky, half drink and half medicine." You take a sip from his cup when he offers. It's like swallowing embers. You cough. He laughs. "Good, right?" "It's awful. But it's hot. That's all anyone cares about." A woman across the way hawks something even stronger. Bishop's wine, she calls it. Red and sharp with clove, steeped with orange peel and sugar until it tastes like sin. It's served in tiny metal cups because more than that will drop you to the cobblestones. You watch a man down 2 in a row and laugh himself hoarse. Later, you pass a man sitting alone on a low step with a stone jug tucked in his arms like a sleeping child. You don't have to ask what's inside. It's not tea, not ale, not broth, just raw, stinging warmth in liquid form. You know it well. The poor don't drink to forget. They drink to endure. Because when the wind slices your face, when your fingers go waxy white, when your lips crack and your feet stop feeling like feet, a cup in your hand can feel like salvation. You drink more broth. You lick the rim. And for a while, the world feels almost survivable. Later, as the sun dips behind the roofs, your stomach growls again. But not for food. The broth is long gone. The heat it gave you is fading. Now what you need is a different kind of fire. That's how you end up in the back corner of a tavern stable, sharing a jug of something called devil's tooth with 2 strangers and a goat. No one knows what's in it. No one asks. It tastes like apples, ash and candle wax. But it's warm, and it makes your limbs go loose in the best way. You stop caring that you haven't had dry socks in 3 days. You stop caring about a lot of things. Someone passes a flask around. Something clearer, meaner. The man beside you calls it Saint's Breath, and laughs like it's a joke only his liver understands. You sip once, cough so hard your eyes water, and pass it on. In the Middle Ages, everyone drinks. Children drink. The sick drink. Monks drink. The water will kill you faster than a barrel of weak ale. So they say. And in winter, drink is more than habit. It's armour. A few sips of heated wine and you forget how much your feet hurt. A swallow of boiled ale numbs the tips of your ears. You can feel your fingers again, not because they're warm, but because you've stopped noticing the cold. The tavern itself is packed. Too many bodies, too little air. It's loud, thick with smoke and sweat. But the stable is better. You sit on straw, back to the wall, jug in your lap, the goat asleep beside your knee. You'd laugh if you weren't too tired. One of the strangers starts singing, a ballad about a knight who froze mid-battle and was mistaken for a statue. Everyone joins in by the chorus, off-key but committed. Even the goat bleats once, at the right part. When the jug runs low, someone pulls out a little pouch of dried herbs and drops them into what remains. Sage, pepper, a few cloves stolen from the kitchen. The scent is sharp, weirdly comforting. You sip again. The drink is worse now, but also better. It smells like winter in a way you can't explain. Like staying alive. Like doing whatever it takes. Outside, the wind howls. Someone cracks open the stable door to check the sky. Snowflakes spin in sideways, glittering and angry. The cold rushes in behind them, grabs the back of your neck like a wet cloth. You all groan in unison and yank your cloaks tighter. But nobody moves. Because inside this stable, wrapped in smoke and goat smell and the haze of cheap wine, it's warmer than most homes. You lean your head back, let your eyes close, let the drink work its slow, stupid magic. And in the edge of sleep, just before you slip under, you remember something the old woman at the broth cart said. If the body's a lantern, drink is the wick. You didn't understand it then, but now you feel the flame flickering inside you. Small, unsteady, but still burning. By now, you've learned that warmth in the Middle Ages isn't just about firewood and body heat. It's about belief, not in miracles, not in saints, but in the strange patchwork magic of everyday folk remedies, the kind whispered from grandmother to granddaughter, passed down through frostbitten fingers and aching joints. You hear them all as you walk through the village green. Rub goose grease on your feet, one woman says, hunched over a basket of frozen turnips, then wrap 'em in flannel. No chill can touch you after that. Another, leaning on a stick, swears by sleeping with a clove of garlic in each sock, draws the cold right out your blood. You don't laugh, not anymore, because you've tried everything else. Later that evening you visit a woman they call Magda the Toad. Not to her face, of course, but everyone knows who she is. Lives in a hut at the edge of the wood, where the wind howls louder and the snow stays longer. She's old, yellow-toothed, and always smells faintly of vinegar and burnt milk. But no one ever leaves her house colder than they came in. You knock. The door creaks open without a word. Inside, the hut is warm, but not from a fire. You can't quite place it. The air smells of crushed herbs and something sharp like horseradish and smoke. She gestures to a stool near a pile of drying nettles. You sit. She eyes you like a butcher picks a chicken. "Night chills," she says. You nod. She mutters and pulls a bundle of dried plants from a hook. Sage, rosemary, mustard seed, and something that looks suspiciously like moss. She drops them into a pot of water and sets it in the hearth. It doesn't boil, it steams. A thick, pungent fog rises and curls toward your face. Breathe deep. You do, and instantly regret it. It punches your sinuses like a fist. Your eyes water. Your throat burns. You cough until your ribs ache. She nods with satisfaction. Means it's working. You sit there for an hour, wrapped in an old cloak that smells of cat. She rubs something into your chest, a salve of lard, beeswax and what might be pine resin. It tingles, then burns, then cools, like your skin has remembered something it forgot how to do. Before you leave, she presses a charm into your hand, a tiny cloth sachet filled with dried juniper, garlic skin, and a few red berries. "Tuck it into your sleeve," she says. "Keeps out the dead air." You don't ask what that means, you just do it. And when you step outside, the cold bites just as hard as it did before, but your chest feels looser, your breath comes easier, and you carry with you the faint warmth of superstition. Back in the village, a man you recognize from the tavern calls you over. He shows you a sliver of leather tied around his wrist. "Fox fur," he says, "stops the blood from freezing." He grins. "My uncle swears by it." And behind him, A girl is tying nettle stalks to the legs of her boots for circulation, she claims. None of it makes sense, but none of it has to, because when the fire dies and the blanket's too thin and the air sneaks in through the cracks, it's belief that fills the space. You spend the night in a shed that smells like onions and wet rope. It's better than the street, just barely. The roof leaks in slow, steady drops, and the wind hisses through the slats like a warning. But you've got the sachet from Magda the Toad tucked into your sleeve, and goose grease slathered thick on your feet beneath 3 pairs of rags. You smell like a roast dinner and a herb garden gone sour, but you're warmer than usual, or maybe just less cold. As you lie curled in the dark, head on a coil of rope and knees tucked tight to your chest, you remember more of the strange remedies people shared with you over the past days, like the woman who swore you must never sleep with your mouth open, or the frost spirits would crawl in and settle in your lungs. Her cousin died that way, she said, didn't snore, wheezed, just once, then never woke again. Or the baker's wife who tied a small coin to her left ankle each night. Cold travels up through the feet, she told you, but it can't pass silver. Another man swore by wearing his cap backwards while he slept. Tricks the chill, he said, makes it go round your head instead of through it. You try it tonight, just in case. And as you begin to drift, your face pressed to the rough wooden wall, you think of the frost again, not as weather, but as a creature. It slides in at the edges. It finds the cracks. The door that doesn't seal. The blanket with a hole. The silence between breaths. People talk about it like a spirit, yes, but not a malicious one. Just one that's hungry. Some tie garlic above the bed. Some hang sprigs of holly at the lintel. Some leave a crust of bread on the sills, for the frost, so he'll take that instead of my toes, one girl whispered. You remember, faintly, hearing a story about a man who slept with a mirror under his pillow, to confuse the cold into thinking he's not there. You have no mirror, but the idea clings to you. Like every charm, every herb, every whisper, it's a way to pretend that your survival isn't just chance. That if you do the right thing, carry the right stone, mutter the right phrase before sleep, the night will pass you over. The roof groans above you. The wind shifts. You curl tighter and whisper, without knowing why. Bread for the frost, breath for me. You don't know where you heard it. Maybe no one did. Maybe the cold itself whispered it into someone's ear long ago, and we've all just kept passing it down. The sachet under your sleeve presses lightly against your skin, warm from your body. It smells faintly of pine now, and maybe smoke. Or maybe that's just the shed. You don't care. You fall asleep there, head on rope, boots by the wall, charms in your clothes and superstition in your lungs. You dream of a fire that never smokes and never dies, of boots lined with fur and floors that never bite, of a world where the cold knocks politely and leaves when told. The bell rings before the sun rises, a low clang from the chapel tower, not for worship but for work. You blink awake in the dark, body stiff, face frozen to the wall where your breath settled into rhyme. You groan softly as you sit up. Your knees crack, your back protests, and your toes feel like someone else's. Outside, the village is stirring. Faint footsteps in the snow, the scrape of shovels, hooves clopping toward the mill. This isn't the kind of morning you wake into. It's the kind that drags you out by the collar. You're not a guest today. You're a servant. You've been called on to help cart timber down from the woods before the next snowstorm. The steward said it like it was a blessing. A warm task, this one. Movement'll keep your blood alive. You weren't in a position to decline. So now you stand outside a barn at dawn, waiting for a cart that hasn't been loaded yet, chewing the inside of your cheek to distract from the fact that you still can't feel your thumbs. The other labourers stand around in silence, collars pulled high, scarves wrapped around chins and mouths. One man wears what looks like two cloaks layered, stitched together down the middle. Another's hands are wrapped in wool and twine like bandaged tools. No one speaks, not yet. Then, slowly, the work begins. The steward barks orders. Someone cracks the whip, not at the oxen, but into the air, to shake the morning loose. You help load the first beams, stacking them in the cart, lifting with your legs like they showed you. The wood's cold, not just to the touch, through. It chills you from your palms to your ribs, each beam a frozen accusation. And then you walk. You walk miles, boots slipping on packed snow, breath coming in bursts that sting your throat. Your shoulders ache, your arms burn. But the worst is the sweat. Because here's the irony no one mentions. Moving warms you, yes, but sweating in the cold is a kind of betrayal. Once your underclothes dampen, the wind finds you again. It snakes through the layers, through the wool and the linen, right into your skin. You sweat, then freeze, then sweat again. A cycle of punishment. One of the men beside you mutters, "Strip down and die, bundle up and drown." It's not a joke. It's just a fact. By midday your cloak is soaked through at the shoulders. You can't feel the ends of your fingers and one of your toenails feels loose. The oxen plod on, unaffected, breath puffing in clouds as they pull the cart. At the edge of the woods, you stop for food. Not much. A chunk of black bread, nearly frozen, a sliver of cured fat. One man carries an onion in his coat, soft from body heat, eaten like an apple. You chew in silence. The trees stand around you like stone pillars, unmoving, uncaring. Someone lights a tiny fire using resin bark and last year's pine needles. You all stand near it like it's sacred, cupping your hands around it even as the smoke stings your eyes. You share the warmth, then stamp it out. The wood gets loaded. The cart turns back, and so do you. Not because you want to, because your life, your warmth, your chance of seeing another spring depends on it. The walk back is worse, not because of the cold, though it's deeper now and the wind has changed direction, but because your body has started to understand just how much it hates you. Your shoulders are tight. Your knees creak like old gate hinges. The sweat on your back, now cooled by the breeze, might as well be ice water soaked into your spine. The cart is heavier too. The timber, once a job, is now a burden. Each jolt of the wheel sends a shudder through your arms as you steady the load. The oxen don't notice. They never do. The man beside you, the one who ate the onion, stumbles. Doesn't fall, just falters. He mutters something about his hip. You glance down. His hands are red, fingertips white. The others see it too, but no one speaks. They all know what that colour means. When you reach the village again, the sun is slipping away. It was never warm, but its retreat makes everything feel crueler. Shadows stretch, doors slam tighter, chimneys start to smoke. But the smoke doesn't mean warmth for you. You help unload the wood, one log at a time, onto the stack behind the manor where someone else will burn it, someone who hasn't lifted it. By the end, your hands are shaking, not from exertion, just from being done. The steward thanks you in the only way stewards ever do, by tossing a heel of bread toward your chest and saying, "Back tomorrow." You nod, because what else can you do? You take the bread and find a bench out of the wind behind the pig shed where the stone wall still holds a whisper of sun. You sit there, chewing slowly, not tasting it, just feeling your jaw work. That's enough. Then something strange happens. A girl passes by. A maid, maybe, 12 or 13. She sees your hands, red and raw and cracked at the joints. She pauses. From her apron, she pulls out a strip of cloth. Clean, soft. She hands it to you wordlessly, then continues on her way. You stare at it for a moment, unsure what to do. Then you wrap it around your left hand, then your right. You tie the ends with your teeth. The heat doesn't return, but the sting eases. You rest your head against the wall. The pigs grunt in their pen nearby. The village clatters faintly behind you, and for a moment you let yourself exist. Not work, not freeze, not ache, just exist. Because this is how warmth returns in the Middle Ages. Not all at once, in some grand roaring fire, but in scraps, in onion breath and borrowed cloth, in fingers that keep moving and strangers who don't look away. And as night falls again, you know you'll rise tomorrow, not because you're ready, but because your life depends on it. You've never climbed this high before. The foothills are bad enough, rocky paths, stiff winds, and mule tracks so narrow they vanish under snow, but this is something else. Here, in the upper villages, the cold doesn't just bite, it inhabits. It owns the soil, the roofs, the language itself. Even the air feels older. You are sent up to deliver a message, a folded scrap of parchment sealed in wax, and now the sun's nearly gone. The last farmhouse you passed is already smoking from the chimney, and the door was barred before you even reached it. You didn't knock, you know better. People up here don't welcome strangers after dusk, not in winter, not when every breath of warmth must be earned. But then you see it, a flicker of movement up the slope. A low, rounded stone house, half buried in the earth like it's trying to hide from the wind. Smoke curls lazily from a stone chimney no taller than your shoulder. You hurry toward it, boots crunching on snow packed hard as bone. You knock once, then again. A pause, then the door creaks open just enough to reveal a face carved from winter, cheeks raw from wind, eyes sharp and suspicious, grey hair pulled back beneath a hood. She looks you up and down, says nothing, and then gestures. Not come in, just get it over with. Inside, it's not warm, but it's clever. The main room is sunken into the ground, built low, with walls of packed stone and thick turf above. Every surface is lined with fabric, wool drapes, felted cloths, even animal skins hanging like tapestries, not for decoration, for insulation. The ceiling beams drip faintly where the frost outside has met the breath of the living. You stand there, dripping and stiff, as she ladles something from a black pot hanging over a narrow trench of coals. Not a hearth, there's no open fire, just a low channel cut into the floor filled with embered dung and pressed ash. Smokeless, efficient. You've only ever heard of these. The mountain folk call them sleeping trenches. She hands you a bowl without ceremony. Barley, turnip, a shaving of something green. Possibly moss. You eat it all. Later, when the sun's truly gone and your feet are starting to ache from thawing, she points to the corner. You see it now. Her bed isn't a pile of straw. It's a buried bed. A hollowed platform tucked deep into the wall, lined with fleece and covered in thick felted wool. She slips in first, pulling a curtain across the entrance. You hesitate, unsure. She opens the curtain again and says, "Share or freeze." You don't argue. Inside, it's like a cave. You lie shoulder to shoulder, not touching, not speaking. The bed is cramped but astonishingly warm, not from fire, but from the layers, from the bodies, from not letting the heat out. You've heard that some mountain homes don't heat the air at all, only the people. That fire is precious. That breath is warmer when shared. Now you understand. At first, you think you won't sleep. The space is too small, the air too still. You've spent too many nights with drafts under the door and rats rustling nearby. But here, wrapped in the felted silence of the mountain bed, your body begins to unclench. The warmth doesn't hit you all at once. It builds minute by minute until your frozen muscles loosen like knots soaked in hot water. You hear the old woman breathe beside you, slow, rhythmic, certain. Her back doesn't rise much with each inhale. Her breaths are shallow, trained. Up here, where the air thins, lungs learn to sip instead of gulp. You match her rhythm instinctively, not for comfort, for survival. The bedding smells of lanolin and earth, of smoke that never rises high, and wool that's never dry. It's not a bad smell, it's honest, human. You shift slightly and feel something under your hip, a hot stone, flat and smooth, still radiating the last of its warmth. She must have slipped it in before you arrived. You press your hand to it. It's not hot now, just not cold. That alone feels like wealth. Outside the wind howls, but inside there's silence, not peace, purposeful silence. You can feel it in the way everything is packed, planned, pressed. No space wasted, no breath spent. Even the way she stores her herbs, hanging from the rafters in little waxed cloth bundles, feels like a strategy. Up here, everything is designed to keep warmth in and death out. She turns once in her sleep and mutters a word you don't know. It sounds like a blessing, or maybe a curse. You don't ask. You remember hearing once that some mountain folks sleep with hoods on, not just to trap heat, but to muffle their ears from the night spirits that wander the high passes. Another family you met lined their walls with dried mushrooms, convinced the spores absorbed cold. Someone else swore that black wool was warmer than white, because the dark remembers the fire. You used to laugh at these things, but now you lie in a buried bed, under wool that feels heavy as a tomb lid, beside a stranger who hasn't spoken more than 10 words to you, and you're more comfortable than you've been in weeks. It's not softness that keeps you alive. It's insulation. The woman stirs again, reaches toward a shelf and fumbles for a small clay flask. Without a word, she passes it to you. You sip. It's thick, warm, and tastes faintly of smoke and thyme. A root brew maybe. Bitter, but it spreads through your chest like a coal settling into your belly. You whisper a thank you. She doesn't reply, but she doesn't take it back either. You keep it close. Later, just before sleep takes you fully, you wonder how many winters this house has stood, how many travellers it swallowed and warmed and sent back down the mountain with stories they never quite believed themselves. You won't forget it. Not the trench fire, not the black wool, not the weight of quiet warmth between stone walls and stars. You fall asleep, wrapped not in luxury, but in intent. And for once, the cold doesn't follow you into your dreams. You leave before dawn. Not because you're ready, but because she wakes you with a nudge to the shoulder and a muttered, "Storm's coming, go now, or stay a week." You choose the first option. The door creaks open to a sky not yet lit, but already heavy with the smell of snow. It hasn't started falling, but you can taste it on the air, sharp, metallic, almost like biting a coin. You pull your cloak tighter. She hands you a lump of something wrapped in linen. You nod your thanks. There are no goodbyes, just the sound of the latch falling behind you, and the crunch of your boots as you begin the descent. But even as you walk, chilled again within minutes, something's changed. You know now that warmth isn't always roaring firelight and heaped logs. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's a thick curtain and a well-placed stone. Sometimes it's a woman who says 10 words and shares her last mug anyway. You pass the frozen stream before noon and the land flattens. The trees return. First a few scraggly birches, then whole stands of pine. And it's there, in the woods, that you see a strange sight. A small clearing, no house, no shed, but a fire pit, and circling it, staves, 6 of them, tall, straight, each planted in the ground and tipped with bundles of herbs, lavender, wormwood, rosemary. Beneath them, someone's cleared snow into a neat berm, forming a kind of open wall. You walk to the centre, still warm. Someone slept here. Last night. Maybe still nearby. You crouch beside the fire pit. Its centre is layered with coals, ash, and, strangely, stones. Not cooking stones. Sleeping stones. Heated near the fire, wrapped in cloth and tucked under cloaks to radiate heat all night long. You find one now, half buried in soot. Still faintly warm. You hold it in your hand and think about what it means to make camp like this. You've heard of them before. Travelling herbalists, root sellers and hedge healers. People who refuse to sleep under roofs. Not because they don't have homes, but because they trust their own warmth more than anyone else's. One woman in the next village says these types carry a smoke shawl. A thick wool wrap soaked in wood smoke for days, so the smell clings and the insects flee. Another swore they line their boots with dried mint to stop frostbite from crawling up the legs. You used to think they were mad, but now, crouched in their circle of staves, you begin to wonder. Because this place, this tiny open-air sanctum, is warm. Not just in temperature, in intent. Whoever built it understood that warmth is more than heat. It's rhythm, routine, preparation. A knowledge that even if the fire dies in the night, the stones will hold enough memory to see you through. You don't stay long. You're still a traveller, and the storm she warned about hasn't struck yet. But it will. Still, you pause before you go. You take one of the hot stones and wrap it in your own spare cloth, pressing it against your chest under your cloak, and you leave the fire pit just as you found it. Because some places feel sacred, not because of gods, but because of the bodies they've kept breathing. The storm hits just after nightfall. Not a gentle drift of snow, but a wall, thick, wet, driven sideways by wind that whistles like a blacksmith's bellows. By the time you reach the next settlement, your cloak is stiff. Your fingers have gone numb twice, and your ears ring with the sheer emptiness of the white world around you. But the stone under your cloak? Still warm. You'd pressed it to your chest all day, shifting it between hands and ribs like a hidden ember of the morning's wisdom. Now, in the lee of a barn wall, you pull it free again. The cloth is damp, but the heat remains, faint, like a ghost curling against your palm. The inn is full, of course. It always is during storms, but you knew better than to hope for a bed. You circle behind the stables, where an open-sided shed leans against a low stone wall. A few tools, some hay, a sack of something that smells like onions. No one else. Good enough. You dig out a hollow in the straw, kick aside a few spiders, and begin your ritual. First, the cloak off, just long enough to wrap the stone in the driest wool you have. Then, you strip your boots and shake out your socks. You rub your feet with snow, then wrap them again with the mint you picked earlier from the edge of the trail. Not because it's warm, but because it keeps the skin from cracking. An old woman told you that once. You spread your pack across the open side of the shed like a windbreaker. Not much, but it slows the gusts. Then, you curl around your stone the way she did. You close your eyes, and you listen. Not for danger, not for wolves or thieves, for signs of others, other bodies breathing, other fires flickering, other signs of life in the storm. Because that's the other lesson you've learned out here. Warmth is social. Survival is communal. Even when you're alone, you're never really surviving solo. Somewhere, in another shed, or a root cellar or buried bed, someone else is doing the same as you. Wrapping wool over a stone, sealing in breath, whispering prayers to herbs they barely believe in. Not out of faith, but out of habit and hope. You fall asleep thinking of them, of the woman on the mountain, of the ring of staves, of the herbalist who wrapped herself in smoke to ward off night spirits, and maybe just to smell like home, and you realise something very old and very true. fire dies. But technique survives. You wake to silence. The storm has passed, but the world is softer now, blanketed and slow. You stretch, joints stiff but not aching. You check the stone, still faintly warm. You smile. You've kept the heat alive through a second night, not with fire, but with knowledge, passed down in layers of felt and fleece, in whispers and habits, and hot stones passed from stranger to stranger. You stand, brush the snow from your knees and keep walking. The cold is still there, but so are you. The village you reach by noon is unlike any you've seen so far. It's low, not just in altitude, but in posture. The homes seem to crouch, as if bracing for some eternal blow. Roofs slope steeply, almost touching the ground, and walls lean inward like tired shoulders. Snow piles up against them not by accident, but by design. The villagers, you notice, don't shovel it away. They encourage it. Snow here is insulation. A man gestures you into his home without words. He doesn't ask who you are. He just points at your boots, then the corner. You obey, leaving them by the door. The floor is dirt. The air inside is humid, smoky, and surprisingly warm. You step further in and feel it. Not just warmth, but a soft kind of heat. No harsh fires, no sharp edges of wind. Just a steady, heavy warmth that clings to your skin like wet linen. Then you see it. The oven. Not freestanding, not iron, not stoked like the ones in the cities. This is a cachalophan, a great masonry stove built into the wall itself. It glows with stored heat, not flame. The fire inside was lit hours ago, and it's already died down. But the clay shell still radiates warmth. You approach it, hand outstretched. The surface is smooth, glazed in green tiles, not hot enough to burn, but enough to draw the cold from your bones like a sponge soaking up spilled ink. The man's wife motions you over. She's laying thick woolen clothes on a bench set against the stove, not just to dry them, to warm them. You sit. The wood beneath you is toasty, the heat rising gently up your spine. You feel it curl around your ribs, settle beneath your jaw. You don't even realize your shoulders are dropping until you sigh. There are children here too. They're sprawled out around the base of the stove like lazy cats, napping or muttering games to one another. No shoes, no mittens, just heavy socks and flushed cheeks. You wonder how long they've been here. Hours, all morning, maybe since the snows began. This isn't just a heater, it's a hearth, and not in the metaphorical sense. It is the literal heart of the home, warm, central and essential. Everything else radiates from it. Beds are built into the corners of the stove. Bread dough rests in clay bowls along its shelf. Herbs dry from hooks just above its curve. One girl has even hung her wet mittens from a wooden spoon sticking out of the side like an arm. You remember what someone once told you. The stove keeps everything alive. Not just the people, the yeast, the seeds, the books, the bones of old dogs curled beneath it and babies swaddled against it, and it lasts. Hours after the fire is gone, the heat remains. It doesn't flicker, doesn't vanish. It lingers, reliable, slow, generous. You close your eyes for a moment and breathe. The scent is rich. Baked earth, bread crust, wool, and something faintly sour like fermented cabbage. Nothing luxurious, but utterly human. In this village, people don't chase heat. They build for it. They trap it, shape it, and let it soak into every inch of their lives. And tonight, you'll sleep beside it too. Later that night, you're still tucked against the warm base of the stove when the man begins to hum. Not a song exactly. More of a rhythm, a deep, slow sound that rises from the chest and curls out into the smoky air like steam. His wife joins him. No words, just sound. And for a moment, you forget the cold entirely. Then the old woman speaks. You hadn't noticed her before. She'd been bundled so deep into the shadows behind the stove that she almost blended with the clay. But now she leans forward. Her eyes catch the low firelight, and she begins to tell a story. She doesn't address you, not directly. She speaks as if to no one, or maybe to the stove itself. She talks of the year the river froze solid in October and didn't thaw until April, of the time they kept turnips under the bed and rubbed goose fat on their feet to keep the skin from cracking. She talks of neighbours who burned peat bricks in secret, and of a cousin who slept wrapped in dry nettle sacks for warmth. And then she tells you the tale of the stove that saved the cow. You blink. Yes, the cow. It was a blizzard, she says, worse than usual. No food, no hay, and the barn collapsed under snow. The family dragged the animal into the house and pressed her flank up against the stove. That cow's breath steamed up the walls for 3 days, she laughs, but she gave us milk and we all lived. You picture it now, steam rising from the floor, a cow blinking sleepily beside children curled on straw, everyone breathing in the same heavy, damp heat. You don't laugh, because you believe it, and because the warmth in this room feels like something that could keep anything alive, hoofed or not. When the children fall asleep, the woman folds a thick linen blanket and hands it to you. You slide down further along the bench and lay your head where the stove's belly is fullest. It's like resting against a sleeping beast, alive, warm, breathing quietly through tile and clay. You think about all the ways people in other villages tried to fight the cold, fires that needed constant tending, clothes layered until they stiffened, walls stuffed with straw that mice chewed through in spring. But this is passive resistance, not a battle, a collaboration. Build the heat once, trap it, then trust it. You wake in the middle of the night only because someone has stirred beside you. The old woman is moving again, gently, slowly. She's checking the firebox, not to feed it, but to make sure it's sealed. She isn't adding fuel, just making sure no heat escapes. She nods once and returns to her bed. That's the secret, you realise. They don't chase heat like it's wild prey. They treat it like a guest, one that's invited, welcomed, and not allowed to slip away unnoticed. By morning the snow is hip-deep outside, but inside the stove the warmth still holds, and in your bones it does too. You leave with a small tile in your pack, a gift from the family, chipped from the old, cracked back of their second stove. For your own hearth someday, they say. You run your thumb across its glazed edge all the way down the road. You've wandered through snowstorms, curled beside oven stoves, and shared breath with strangers. But nothing quite prepares you for what you find in the next valley, a monastery. Not the towering, spired kind built to impress kings, but a low, brooding structure tucked into the mountain's hip like a secret. Stone walls rise from the earth itself, patched with moss and half buried in frost. Its windows are small, thick-glassed or shuttered, and the door is just a slab of wood darkened with age and weather. The monk who answers your knock doesn't say much, just opens the door wider, then turns and walks away. Inside, the cold hits different, not biting or wild like the wind outside, but disciplined, controlled, as if it's been tamed. You step into the stone cloister and follow the monk's steps through low arches, past a row of niches filled with candles, and into a small chamber that smells of beeswax, old paper, and, unexpectedly, onions. It's the refectory. The other monks are already seated, hunched over simple bowls. The warmth in here doesn't come from fire. You realise that quickly. It comes from bodies, and from the walls. They've been built thick, impossibly thick, each one nearly the width of a man. At first glance you assumed it was just the style, but no, it's insulation. Dense, Layered stone packed with straw and sealed with clay, a medieval strategy for slowing heat loss. Each room seems to trap what little warmth the sun or a dozen monks might offer, and hold it like a cupped hand. The monks don't chatter. They eat in silence, wrapped in long wool habits. Some have gloves with the fingertips cut off. One older brother is holding his spoon with both hands, breathing onto his fingers between bites. Then, just as you're about to sit, you notice something beneath the table. Bricks, heated bricks, arranged carefully under each bench, wrapped in thick linen and still faintly steaming from the fire you now realize must be hidden behind the walls. Radiant heat, distributed not upward but outward, through stone channels built into the very monastery itself. No chimney smoke, no open flame, just clever cloistered warmth. You eat, grateful for the silence, the bowl of barley stew and the glowing brick at your feet. When a novice hands you a second bowl, your fingers almost burn with the shock of heat from the glazed ceramic. They must keep the bowls in the oven itself, another trick you've never seen outside monastery walls. After supper, they offer you lodging. Not a guest room, a cell. Stone walls, narrow cot, wool blanket, and tucked inside the blanket, a warm slate, thin, rectangular, and neatly wrapped in lamb's wool, still radiating the day's stored heat. The monk gestures once, placing it at your feet. Then he leaves. You lie there for a moment, stunned by the simplicity. No fire, no noise, no fuss, just warmth where it matters most. Your feet. The slate at your feet doesn't just warm your toes, it grounds you. The heat is deep and slow, like it's been travelling for hours just to arrive here at the bottom of your cot. You shift beneath the thick wool blanket, and each movement brings a new wave of warmth from the slate, like ripples from a silent bell. It's dark in the cell. The only light comes from a candle burning low in a wall niche. Its flame dances gently, casting shadows like monks in procession across the stone walls. You're not cold, not even close, and that's saying something in a room with no fireplace, no window glass, and not a single visible flame. The silence deepens. It's the kind of quiet you can hear, the kind that wraps around your ears and tucks you in tighter than any blanket. You wonder how many winters these stones have seen, how many feet they've warmed with slate and straw, how many monks have drifted to sleep this same way, feet glowing, breath steady, body still. The monastery, you realize, is built not just for prayer but for preservation. Everything here is designed to minimize waste, not just of food or time, but of heat. You remember how the hallways doubled back on themselves, forming tight cloisters with no wind tunnels. How the corridors dipped slightly below ground, letting the earth's natural insulation do half the work. And then, when you drift off at last, your dreams are filled with stone tunnels, quiet chants, and the echo of warm footsteps. You rise before dawn, not because you're cold, because the bell tolls. It's low and distant, barely more than a vibration through the walls. You follow it barefoot, slate still warm behind you, and rejoin the monks in the chapel. The breath of 20 men curls into the air as incense burns and hymns rise. There are no pews here, just stone benches. But beneath them, you recognize the trick now. Those linen-wrapped bricks again, still warm from the same hidden fire. And in that moment, you understand. This isn't just a place of worship. It's a system, a machine, a body of warmth, stitched together by habit, repetition, and a kind of sacred practicality. Even the monks' robes are optimized for the cold. Thick woven wool, yes, but always layered, an under tunic, a habit, a scapula. Hoods pulled low, not just for humility but for heat. Mittens folded into sleeves. Even their sandals are lined with felt made from the fleece of their own sheep, sheared in summer and pressed by hand. Before you leave, They offer you bread, coarse, seeded, still warm from their ancient oven. You nod your thanks, tuck it under your cloak and step back into the snow. The monastery behind you breathes once, slowly, like a great stone animal exhaling. You walk away warm and full. You reach the last village just as the sky turns the colour of old pewter. Everything is still. No carts, no dogs, no voices, just rows of snow-covered roofs sagging under the weight of winter, and chimneys exhaling lazy curls of smoke into the heavy air. This place doesn't feel abandoned. It feels hushed, like it's holding its breath. Your boots crunch through the powder. At the edge of the square stands a low building that's neither home nor inn. The wood is scorched in places, patched with rough stones and earth, and the door is wide open. You step inside. It's not empty. It's full. With people, yes, but more than that. With heat. A dry, humming warmth that hits you the moment you cross the threshold. Every wall radiates it. Every bench. Every post. Even the floor carries a subtle pulse, like the earth itself is lending its breath. You realize quickly, you're in a sweat house, not a bathhouse, not a sauna, something older, earthier. A place where people don't just get warm, they get well. A woman wrapped in linen gestures you to sit. She presses a bundle of something into your hands. It smells sharp and herbal. Juniper, maybe, and yarrow. You hold it awkwardly while she pours water over a pile of stones stacked in a hollow dome at the centre of the room. The hiss of steam fills the space instantly, curling around limbs and leaking out the door like spirits escaping. No one speaks loudly here. They just sit, breathe, and let the heat soak through them like balm. You glance around. Old men with wool caps pulled down to their brows, mothers rocking drowsy children, a shepherd rubbing his feet with ash and lard, a girl quietly peeling the bark from a willow twig and laying it beside her head like a charm. There's a rhythm here. Inhale, exhale, sweat, stillness. The walls are made of thick sodden stone, designed not to impress but to contain. You see now that the heat source is buried, like in those monastery halls. A fire lit hours before your arrival, its coals banked beneath stones that hold their warmth long after the flames die. The stones are ancient, blackened smooth, passed down, seasoned by centuries of steam. Someone begins humming, not a song with words, just a low vibration rising from the chest. The same sound you heard back at the tile stove home. You realise now, it's not just a chant, it's a technique. A way to warm the ribs from the inside, and then the doors close. The woman who greeted you ladles water again. This time it hits the rocks with a hiss that bites. Heat surges across the room in a wave. You gasp, but no one else flinches. This is their element. Your skin stings, then flushes. You try not to move. Everyone else seems so still, so used to this. The heat sinks into your bones like it's always belonged there, like it's pulling something old and cold out of you. The girl with the willow twig places it across her chest and exhales slowly. An elder sitting cross-legged in the corner wipes his brow with a cloth soaked in vinegar. Another trick someone once told you to keep the body from overheating too fast. You think back to all the tricks you've seen. Heated bricks, beds of moss, cloaks over stoves, and you realise this, right here, is the last one, the end of the line. When the cold outside becomes unbearable, the sweat house becomes ritual. A place not just for warmth, but for cleansing. Not just of dirt or illness, but of fear. Fear of the winter, fear of the dark, fear of what might come if the body grows too still, too slow. The woman leans down and whispers to you, not unkindly, but with the sternness of someone who's known frostbite. Don't fall asleep in here, not the first time. You nod. The heat is hypnotic, like being wrapped in breath. They say some of these old houses were once used to bring babies into the world and to carry people out. The cycle begins and ends here, in steam. The chanting hum rises again. Louder this time, a second voice joins, then a third. It isn't music, not exactly, but it binds the moment, like thick thread stitching everyone in the room together. You press the herb bundle to your face. It smells like the woods behind your grandmother's home. Pine, sweat, damp leaves. Someone presses a cup into your hands. You sip. It's warm broth, barely salted, made from root vegetables maybe, or marrow bones, but it spreads through you like molten wool. Later, when the steam has thinned and your fingers are wrinkled, they open the doors again. The air that hits you is ice. You expect to shiver, but your body holds the warmth like a furnace. The heat lingers in your ribs, your spine, your thighs. They don't let you leave right away. First, you're wrapped in layers of dry wool. Not cloaks, ritual wraps. Strips of cloth pressed and folded, found tight around limbs to trap what's been kindled. No skin left exposed. Even your ears are covered. Only your eyes peek out like slits in snow. This warmth isn't meant to be wasted. One of the older women presses a bit of fat into your palm. Rendered goose or pig, you think. She mimics the motion of rubbing it onto your cheeks and lips. A final barrier. Then, and only then, they let you go. You step out into the snow, and for the first time in your long journey, you don't feel the cold like an enemy. You carry something older than fire, something harder to extinguish. A ritual memory, etched into your skin, sealed by steam and silence and voices humming like distant thunder. And as the village disappears behind you, you feel it. A hush not of fear, but of survival. A living warmth that walks with you. A warmth that doesn't fade. The snow continues to fall, soft now, like sifted flour on an old wooden table. Your footsteps grow slower, not from fatigue, but from quiet. Around you, the world has gone still again, but you are not cold. You carry the heat of everything that's come before. The tile stove hum, the wool-lined cloaks, the hearths, the bricks, the slates tucked under bed covers, the layers of straw in the mattress, the whistle of a hot onion in your pocket, even the sound of monks breathing in sync behind stone walls, or villagers murmuring through steam inside a sweat house. Those linger with you now, not as memories, but as insulations, and under all of it, one truth. No one survived the Middle Ages alone. It took hands, many hands, hands sewing, tending fire, shaping clay, rubbing warmth into chapped fingers, passing you broth. A communal dance against the dark. The cold never truly left. It never stopped pressing at the door or sifting through the cracks. But now you know its name. You know the tools. You know how they endured, how they turned frost into ritual, silence into comfort, hardship into habit. Tonight you get to rest. You felt the biting wind, stood barefoot on stone, and curled under pelts beside flickering embers. You've carried timber, chanted in the dark, and steamed your breath back into life. So now, just listen. Let the hush settle. Let the warmth stretch long in your limbs. Let the air grow thick with wool and smoke and the quiet certainty that you made it through the longest night. You're safe, you're wrapped, you're here.